So once again, thank you everybody for coming. And my name is Katie, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with you all this morning from all over the world. I'm assuming here in Ecuador, Israel, the States, I believe also. So as experts here in Ecuador, Gulliver also provides a lot of tours and trips and cruises to the Galapagos, and we've been doing this for over 15 years. So I designed this webinar to help you find an itinerary for your client, or to better help us find you one for your client. It's going to be approximately 30 to 40 minutes, depending if there's questions at the end and things like that. So let's get started. And of course, if you have any questions, please make sure you write them in the chat. And afterwards, we can briefly talk about them as well. So before you begin, I already did this with a couple people. I wanted to make sure that your sound was okay. They told me they gave me a thumbs up. Everything was all right. So if your video is on, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up or write in the chat, okay. And I'd like to do a quick icebreaker with you guys. I know this is not really something that you do in webinars, but it's something different. We're all at home, so I'd like to do something different with you all. And please tell me where you guys are joining from today, or you can raise your hand and I can choose you and put your mic on. And tell me what kind of animal in Galapagos that you find most interesting. So you can go ahead and unmute or raise your hand if you want to tell me, or write in the chat.
Hey guys, if you wanna share about that, so you can unmute your mic.
Yeah,
I guess.
Go ahead.
Someone has been already to the Galapagos, maybe, and know the place, or not yet.
Okay, guys. Can I let you know?
Sure. Thank you.
How are you doing? Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation, as I told you in the beginning. And I'm from Las Terrazas de Arana, and I have been in the Galapagos Island for a couple of times. And well, I know not much about the Galapagos Islands. That's why I'd like to be with you in here to learn more about it. And I think that, I don't know, maybe dolphins and tortoises, they are quite interesting about the islands, you know. I just know through 2 or 3 islands. I've been there in Baltra, Santa Cruz, in Isabela, also in San Cristobal, you know, having vacations many years ago. So that's what I would like to know about it.
Okay, well, it's time for you to come back, and you can come with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be great when this quarantine is over, you know, me to go there. It's a good opportunity, as you said.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are already planning their first trips. So Andrea wrote us a message in the chat. She's from Italy. Thank you so much for joining all the way from Italy. Wow. And you're here because you've never been there. Well, I hope in today's webinar, I kind of give you, spark your imagination a little bit on the Galapagos, and we can help you get there one day or help your clients. And we're really glad that you were able to join. Nicolas or Andrea? Oh, hi, you're sending the what's up. Nicolas, is there maybe something you'd like to share? Okay, I see his mute is not on. So, okay. Anybody else would like to share maybe where they first want to travel when this is over?
Yeah, I think that Natalia as well has never been to the Galapagos, and Sophie also. So I think a lot of people actually would really like to know better the destination. They know maybe on magazines and on videos.
Pictures aren't the same ever. Great. All right then. Well, it looks like everybody's excited to get started. Well, thank you everybody for sharing who did in the chat, and I'm happy to be here with you guys. So Like I mentioned before, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. Jeremy is going to be helping me, so are my other colleagues, and we can summarize and discuss at the end. So let's get to it. So today's presentation with me, Katie, about now, it should take about another 30 minutes. We're going to do a quick refresher on the Galapagos. This is really important to understand why the islands are the way they are. And then we'll go into a new approach that you can take with your clients when you're looking to give them something about Galapagos. And especially since many of you are saying that you haven't been there, I think this webinar is going to be really good for you. And we'll talk about the difference between the Eastern and the Western islands, their activities and their wildlife. And then we'll do a quick recap with some testimonials from our own clients that have been to the Galapagos. And then we can review your questions, and then I'll let you know when our next webinar is. So I believe Aaron is going to help us with a video I have for the Galapagos. If he could share his screen with everybody. I may have to stop sharing so that he can do this.
This living laboratory of evolution helped to inspire Charles Darwin and continues to offer a unique opportunity to explore a pristine natural ecosystem. The Galapagos Islands are located 620 miles, or 1,000 kilometers, from the South American mainland, but a world apart from anywhere else on Earth. The archipelago and its surrounding waters, located where 3 ocean currents converge, are famed for the unique animal species found nowhere else on Earth, including marine iguanas, giant tortoises, flightless cormorants, and a diverse variety of finches. The islands have 2 airports, Isla Baltra and Isla San Cristobal, which are serviced by regular flights from mainland cities Quito and Guayaquil. As water temperatures change and seasons shift, different types of wildlife become more or less plentiful, so it's worth keeping a must-see species list in mind when planning your itinerary.
Okay, so the Galapagos Islands are, of course, a living laboratory of evolution that inspires us all the time, and it's the #1 reason why our guests want to go. And so here's some information to help us review real quick. The Galapagos are located 620 miles off the coast of Ecuador, or 1,000 kilometers. There are 3 different currents that meet in the island, so that brings a lot of mix of nutrients, and lots of different animals can thrive here thanks to that, like finches, marine iguanas, endemic animals. There are 2 airports in the Galapagos, one on Baltra Island near Santa Cruz, and the other is all the way to the east on San Cristobal. So flights leave from Quito and Guayaquil once a day in the morning. And remember, we can only fly to Galapagos. It might sound silly, but we do get questions about buses and trains to Galapagos. So in the Galapagos, the shifting currents that arrive there create different seasons. So different types of wildlife become more or less plentiful. So your client should have a must-see list of wildlife. And that's why this webinar is so important, so that we can help you ask the right questions to your guests. Okay, so we're going to go into the Galapagos refresher here. The total amount of land mass is actually 18%. The rest of the Galapagos is actually a marine reserve. So those who know the states well can imagine the total amount of land mass actually fitting into the state of Mississippi or the country of Greece. So it's actually quite a bit of land and islands that we have in the Galapagos, okay? And the reason why the Galapagos Islands are the way they are is because they were formed through hotspots breaking through the crust to form an island. Now, this crust or this plate little geography lesson here is because the Nazca Plate is actually constantly moving. So if you see here with my pointer, we're gonna say this all is the Galapagos Islands and this is the Nazca Plate. And it constantly moves 3 to 4 centimeters to the east every year. So 3 to 4 centimeters is quite a bit of movement, and it's constantly going underneath the South American plate here where Ecuador and Peru is located. So as it constantly moves, it's constantly breaking through the crust, forming new islands. So as we can see in the next slide, here's a map of Galapagos, and you can see the larger islands here, which are still active, like Fernandina and Isabela. Now, as you can see all the way to the east, these are the islands that have moved off of the hot spot, and they continue to sink farther and farther down as they continue to move under the South American plate. And that's why there's such a difference between the islands, and it's important to have a little bit of background on this information when we're talking to our clients so that they can also understand, well, why aren't all the islands just the same? Isn't there all the same wildlife on all the different islands? And so this is a little bit of background that you can give them. So continuing, we're going to talk about the wrong itinerary and why it's wrong. So one of the very biggest reasons that we have is because they went to Galapagos, they didn't get to see that one animal they wanted to. They didn't get to see that one unique landscape. So we need to ask the right questions from the beginning, like our friend pictured here, Charles Darwin. Took that photo myself. So when we're planning their itinerary, we have to ask them the right questions. So other reasons why this might happen is because maybe the itinerary is too rehearsed, it's too organized, or it's too short or too long. So for example, I had a client once who told me, yeah, I want to go to the Galapagos, any itinerary is fine, I'm just happy to be there. And so I said, okay, well, I'll try to give her a mix of everything that I can. I gave her a central and an eastern itinerary. And afterwards, I asked her how it went. She said, awesome, it was amazing. And then she's like, but I didn't get to see the penguins. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is when I was first starting out and providing tours in Galapagos. And I said, well, what could I have done to make sure that doesn't happen again? And now every single time I always say, what's the wildlife that you want to see? What is it specifically that drew you to Galapagos? Because Galapagos penguins aren't going to be found in the east. So those are the things that we really need to make sure that we're asking. And just to briefly go over 2 and 3, when an itinerary is too rehearsed or overly organized, that's because sometimes on cruises, they're very rehearsed, very organized. The guides are basically the protectors of the park. So when an older adult is on a cruise, they feel like they're being treated like children sometimes because they're like, don't do this and don't do that, and remember this rule, remember that rule. So it feels like a little bit overwhelming for them. And then sometimes guests will say, well, I wish I could have had longer time, or the itinerary was way too long and I was exhausted at the end. So we'll go into the questions now of what we should be asking. It's a different kind of approach. It's not the same questions that you're asking, okay, what's your budget? How many people? How many days? You want to ask them specifically, are you a fan of birds and bird watching? What are the wildlife species that you really want to see? And what are you absolutely not interested in seeing? And the example I can give here is because I had a gentleman who was interested in visiting Galapagos, and he was from Florida. Now, in the States, they have zoos and parks, and in Florida especially, they have flamingos. So there's also flamingos in Galapagos. I didn't want to send him to somewhere where he was going to see the same wildlife he could see in the United States, for example. There's also zoos. Sometimes they see Galapagos tortoises. Sometimes they get that history lesson back over there in their schools or wherever they're from. So it's important to ask them. And in this case, he absolutely did not want to see any flamingos. So I made sure that he did something that was worth his time, because we're not going to send people to the Galapagos to see things that they have no interest in. So let's see. Now we'll continue on to activities. Activities in the Galapagos happen on land and on water. So we need to ask them, what activities do you prefer? Do you like snorkeling? Are you a swimmer? Are you a strong swimmer? Or are you a sea lion? Do you like both land and water? So when we ask them this, we're able to see what kind of itinerary, and the difference between the Western and the Eastern is that the Western islands have a lot of land hikes, but they're a little bit more difficult because of the type of geography in the landscapes and the lava fields, because they're more recent islands and they're younger compared to the East, where trails are a little bit smoother. And the snorkeling, also in the water, we have to keep in mind that there's some strong currents in Galapagos. There's colder waters, warmer waters. To the west, for example, the waters are colder, but the snorkeling is much better because of the wildlife underneath the surface you can see. And then the third part of asking the right questions is about the unique landscapes that there are in the Galapagos. For example, pictured here is Pinnacle Rock on Bartolome, and in the distance over here is Santiago. So many people, when they think of Galapagos, they have an idea in their head. And when you ask them, so what are you most interested in Galapagos, or what do you think of when you think of Galapagos? So that's a good way to really peer into their mind and get an idea of what they're thinking. And then that way, when you contact us, we're able to take this information and provide to you right away the right itinerary. So we're not wasting the client's time. So in review of the three-part questions that we just talked about, be specific, ask them what kind of wildlife they want to see and the activities that they're interested in doing. Some people don't like to swim at all. They might say, yeah, I want to cruise in Galapagos, but I'm not going to do any snorkeling. So keep that in mind also. And then landscapes. What do you think of when you think of Galapagos? And then this way, it shows your client your interest in planning their trip. It gives your client confidence because we're all showing them that we know what we're talking about. We're able to provide an itinerary right to the T, and it saves time. So the closing of the offer is done really quick because we knew exactly what we were looking for. Okay, so continuing, we're going to go into the Eastern and the Western Islands and what their main differences are. So here's a picture with the Galapagos map, and I have circled here Fernandina, Isabela, Santiago, there's an island in here called Ravida and Pinzón, and I have Floreana as well. So typically your cruises for the Western Islands are going to be composed of these visits. They may or may not include some other visits in the center. We'll get into that in a minute. There's hundreds of itineraries in Galapagos. There's so many boats. There's so many itineraries. So it's better just to know what the islands are. So in the West, we have younger, more barren landscapes, lava fields. There's less wildlife actually on the island, but if you look at the marine life, it blows you away. So there's really great snorkeling, and the Western Islands are best for more active guests. So active guests, I mean that they like hiking, they like strenuous activities maybe, they really like adventure, and this is the type of snorkeling and hiking that they're gonna find in the West. So most itineraries, excuse me, are between 6 to 8 days, and that's because of the distance that it takes to get around these islands over here. So to get on this side, you're not going to see any island hopping tours that do this, but on the east is where island hopping is really popular because it's very easy to go from here back to Santa Cruz, okay? So that's really important to remember. Only the eastern side of Isabela can be done with island hopping. Fernandina, absolutely none. It's just way too far. So then we're gonna go to the Eastern Islands. you're gonna see that I also circled Floreana. And that's because this island is kind of smack in the center with Santa Cruz. And sometimes, depending on the cruise or the itinerary, it'll be included. So the eastern islands are composed of Santa Cruz, South Plazas, really small island right here, Santa Fe, Floreana, Genovesa to the top, San Cristobal, and down here at the bottom, Española. So the difference with the eastern islands, these are especially great for bird watching. You're gonna find all the different types of shorebirds, red-footed boobies, Nazca boobies, blue-footed boobies, frigatebirds. I could name a list that goes on forever. Because of these islands are located to the east, they've had much more time to develop. They have much more vegetation on their islands. So it's not as hot as the younger islands, Fernandina and Isabela, that are barren and dry. So you have a little bit more humidity, and the waters are actually, for snorkeling, a little bit calmer. So if you have maybe an older couple, because remember in the Galapagos, the majority of visitors are 50 and above. So these are people who are still active, but maybe not as active as younger people. So they're looking for an itinerary to visit Galapagos that maybe isn't going to do so much wear and tear on their body either. So snorkeling is kind of like a easygoing, floating type of snorkeling, not so much diving because the waters are deeper. The formations of the islands have gone deeper. So you're going to see more animals that are dwelling deeper into the water, like sharks, hammerheads. You're still going to see lots of tropical fish and sea lions, but it's not as active as the west. And once more, for the itineraries in the east, you're looking at 6 to 8 days to be able to get to these islands that are really far away, like Española, and to the top, Genovesa. This is like an overnight cruise. Like you leave Santa Fe in the morning and or at night, sorry, and then you could arrive at Española in the morning. That's how long it takes to get there. So that's also another reason why island hopping isn't provided to these islands. And as I mentioned briefly before, the central islands. These are a lot of really small islands, perfect for island hopping. All of these can be done in day tours, and they're all based off of Santa Cruz. You can also do a cruise here. So maybe people who are short on time in the US and Canada, people don't have as many vacation days. They usually have about 14 days or maybe even less. So when they're looking for something shorter to do, but they really want to go to Galapagos, we can do a cruise here about 4 to 6 days. And they still get a general idea, a good mix of the east and the west and the different shorebirds, but they may not be able to see a lot of endemic wildlife. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the differences of the activities on each island and their endemic wildlife. I'm going to go through the major islands from west to east, and here's a little reminder of endemic wildlife. These are species or plants and animals that only exist in one place. So, for example, pictured here is a Galapagos penguin. It's not endemic neither to Fernandina or Isabela, but it is to that area. You're not going to see it in the east. And a lot of people could be disappointed if they're not given this information at the beginning. So Fernandina Island, we're going to start here all the way to the west. The only visitor site here is Espinosa Point. And it is a really unique island because it's the youngest. And the highlights here are, you can actually see marine iguanas feeding under the water, and you can watch cormorants diving, and you can also see the mola mola sunfish. So pictured here, I can tell you myself, in snorkeling in Fernandina, I've seen the flightless cormorant diving, shooting right past me. It was just amazing. So this is one of the endemic wildlife that we're talking about. This, for example, can only be seen on Fernandina. You're not going to see them nesting on Isabela Island, for example. You may see them snorkeling, passing by, but you don't see them anywhere else. On to Isabela Island, the biggest island of all the Galapagos. It has 5 volcanoes on it. One of them is, or two of them are active. Wolf is still active, and the most recently active is Sierra Negra, which erupted in 2018. So endemic wildlife here includes the Isabela Galapagos tortoise, which you can see at the breeding center in Puerto Villamil. You can see Galapagos penguins, and another animal that sometimes comes up but cannot be seen is the pink iguana. They only live on Wolf Volcano, and Wolf Volcano is all the way here to the north. So highlights of Isabela Island is one of my favorite islands because there's just so many visitor sites to see and experience. The first pictured here is Tagus Cove. I might have watched the movie The Goonies way too many times when I was younger. I'm obsessed with pirates, and here's a really cool pirate hideout. You can see the graffiti of the pirates, carvings in stone. It's really interesting, and there's a really nice hike with this lookout. And here is a picture of orcas, because between Isabela and Fernandina, there's a really large channel that whales pass through. You can see dolphins, humpback whales, and pictured here, an orca. And here's what I was talking about. Here's a picture of the lava fields of Isabela. It's very rocky, very unstable. So when I say we have active passengers going here, these are people who are able to walk on this terrain. So if we have people who are not able to walk so stable, we might recommend walking sticks, really good shoes, sunblock, and lots of water. There's absolutely no vegetation here except for lava cactuses, which is also an endemic plant species that we can see in Galapagos. This is the famous Sierra Negra volcano, which can be hiked to during island hopping. Sometimes cruises will visit Puerto Villamil, but it's not always included in a Western itinerary on a cruise. And it's very dry and hot, so lots of water is recommended. And this is one of the largest volcano calderas actually in the world. So it's a really big highlight for some. And here's the pink iguana near Wolf Volcano. And the only other place that you actually can see it is on Santa Cruz in the Charles Darwin Research Station. They have a couple there that they work on studies and breeding and things like that. And of course, the Galapagos penguins and the Isabela tortoise. Remember, Galapagos tortoises come from all the different islands and their shells are shaped different. So not all Galapagos tortoises are the same. And island hopping to Isabela is super popular, and one of the most popular sites are Los Túneles and Tintoreras. You can do kayaking here, swimming, snorkeling, and the underwater life is the absolute best when you're doing island hopping. So you can see Galapagos reef sharks and tropical fish, so it's really great for those who don't want to do a cruise. And we continue to Santiago Island. Attractions here are fur seals in Bartolome Island with Pinnacle Rock. You can do a land visit and snorkeling, and you can do this for island hopping and for cruise. So we see here the fur seals are different from sea lions. They have a differently shaped head, smaller ears, and for me, they're really pretty and graceful swimmers, and I just find them really interesting compared to the sea lions that you see everywhere in Galapagos. Okay, Bartolome Island, you can see it here in the map. There's a really small island. If you go, I'll show you here, is actually a lot of debate with scientists that think it might be part actually of Santiago, but it's actually different. And with Bartolome, we have the famous Pinnacle Rock, and there's a boardwalk that you can walk all the way to the top to have a really great view. This is still all Bartolome, and back here is Santiago Island. Santiago had a recent eruption of about 100 years ago. So this is a really popular visit for island hopping. It's a little bit more expensive compared to the other day tours, and it takes about 2 hours to arrive there. Okay, so Baltra Island is important to talk about because this is where one of the most popular airports are in Galapagos. It's actually separate from Santa Cruz, so you have to cross a channel, the Itavaca channel, to get to Santa Cruz. It used to be an American Air Force base. It no longer is. And supposedly there used to be endemic iguanas here, but they no longer live there. I think they're trying to incorporate a new program for them. But basically the highlights here are the main arrival at the airport is actually the first ecological sustainable airport there is. And pictured here is the Lobito bus. This is important because for both cruises and island hopping, you have to get down to the channel to get into Santa Cruz. And they've now implemented these buses that cost $5 per person to go down and to come back up. It's per way, $5. They're really clean, they're really reliable. They're leaving like every time the planes come in every few minutes. So this is important to talk about with us based on the itinerary or cruise because they may or may not to need to board it. Okay, so now we're on Santa Cruz Island, one of the most popular islands just because there's so many hotels and it's basically the center of island hopping. You have the Highlands and the Charles Darwin station, and there's a lot of visits that you can do here without a guide. The only endemic wildlife we're going to find here is at the Charles Darwin Research Station. Otherwise than that, it's more shorebirds that you see on other islands and things like that. So let's go into the visits. When you arrive to Santa Cruz, normally the first visit is the Highlands to our Galapagos Tortoise Ranch. You can have lunch here and you can do some exploring in the lava tunnels. And the Charles Darwin Research Station, they have a really great breeding program for the tortoises, a lot of park interpretation, and a lot of natural history. So this is Tortuga Bay, one of the most beautiful voted beaches in the Galapagos. There's, you can be on the beach here, or you could go towards the back where it's a little bit calmer for kids and families doing snorkeling and kayaking. And here you can visit without a guide also, Las Grietas. It's a really interesting site. It's really deep waters, great snorkeling here also. It's really clear. And then we move on to North Seymour. So North Seymour, you can see here, here was Baltra Island where the airport is, and North Seymour is just a little bit north. So this is one of the most popular islands for island hopping. There's no endemic wildlife, but I do suggest that your passengers wear a hat because there's a lot of birds. And it's a nesting site for both blue-footed boobies and for frigatebirds. So it's really interesting because the frigatebirds are a really, how can I say this, aggressive bird compared to the other birds in Galapagos. They're always trying to steal other birds' food, and they're really mean sometimes, but they're really beautiful. You can see the males here with their pouches trying to attract a mate, and then we have birds nesting. So it's just a mix of blue-footed boobies and frigatebirds just flying over, and it's just really an amazing sight to see. Okay, so here's Floreana Island, and many of you probably know about the mysteries of the first settlers, and there's a lot of drama on this island, but it's actually interesting to visit, not just for those reasons, but they also have really interesting sites like Cormorant Point and Post Office Bay. Post Office Bay was used by whalers and sailors, pirates even, and they basically put a barrel and put in their notes so that the next passing sailor or person passing by would pick it up and deliver it. So now tourists do the same thing. They leave their postcards. And let's say if I'm from the United States and I live near where one postcard says, I'll just bring it home with me and put it in the mail or deliver it myself. So it's actually a really neat system that's still going on today. Great for families doing a really fun interactive activity. Here's Devil's Crown, popular snorkeling and diving site, and the Highlands of Floreana. Okay, moving on, we're gonna go to the northernmost island that can be visited. And as you can see with the distance, this is just not possible for island hopping. And it's nicknamed Bird Island because the only reptile on there is actually a marine iguana, and they're the smallest of all the marine iguanas in the Galapagos. But you can see red-footed boobies in really large masses. And one of the popular visitor sites is the Prince Philip Steps. So here you're going to see all different sorts of birds. Here's Prince Philip Steps. And we have pictured here Galapagos short-eared owl, one of the few places you can see it. And okay, we're gonna move on to Santa Fe, another great island for island hopping. And if you tune in on Thursday, I'll be doing an island hopping versus cruise. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the island hopping and cruises. So if you're confused between the both, join me on Thursday and I'll be able to give you more information on that. So here we actually have some endemic wildlife. We have the Santa Fe land iguana, and it's only found on this island. You're not going to see it anywhere else. And it's a really beautiful island. It's got some really nice cliffs and a really large beach. And there's a lot of sea lions, so it's interesting to see all the different contrasts. And we're making our way now to our final islands in the east, San Cristobal. This is where another airport is located, and it's actually the capital of the Galapagos. Puerto Baquerizo Moreno is the capital, and that's where the airport is, and that's where they have their naval base. So it's not as populated as Santa Cruz. There's a lot less people. And it's a really nice island. There's a lot of things that you can do, just like Santa Cruz, visiting on your own. For example, well, Kicker Rock is a really popular tourist attraction here. It deserves a photo all by itself, just how great it is. When you do snorkeling, normally it's through this channel right here. So it's really calm, but it's really deep. You can see octopus at the bottom, manta rays, hammerheads, really big schools of fish. When you do snorkeling in the Galapagos, you really never know what you're going to see, but you're always going to be surprised. And then Punta Pitt is my favorite visitor site in the Galapagos, just because it's so different from any other visitor site. And that's because you land here and the island is it's really red. You can't see it in this island, but it looks like you're on Mars. And it's very rocky. You can see all the erosion that's happened over the millions of years. And it's the only place that you can actually see all three different types of boobies. So you have red, blue, and Nazca boobies on this island. And it's the only place you can see all three. So if someone's short on time, it's a good visit for them. El Junco Lagoon is a good trail for visitors who are in the port staying there. It's you just need to take a taxi up to the trail, and then you can enjoy it without a guide. You can see frigatebirds, shorebirds, lava lizards, and maybe Galapagos tortoises. And another highlight here is Cerro Brujo. So another difference with the eastern and the western islands is that the eastern islands have so much more erosion, just over millions and millions of years of slowly moving east. So you have really amazing rock formations, and Kicker Rock, where you can see here, is actually one of those eroded islands that have just made a really beautiful scenery and landscapes. And our last island, Española. This is the farthest south. It's not for island hopping. And in another couple 100,000 of years, we may not have this island anymore because, as you can see, it's just slowly moving down the plate, and one day it'll be completely covered by water. So the endemic wildlife of the waved albatross, we don't know where they're going to go. Maybe they'll start landing on Floreana one day. So the endemic wildlife here that you absolutely cannot see on any other island is the waved albatross. And they are really big birds, very clumsy walkers because they spend the entire year at sea. They only land to reproduce, and they have a really neat mating dance where they smack their beaks together. It looks like they're fighting, but they're not. And we have the Galapagos Hawk. The Galapagos Hawk is endemic to Galapagos, but not to Española. You can see him or her on Isabela, but you're not going to see it where there's people. They're very shy, and they like to stay away. And Española is a very nice island because it has huge cliffs. It was actually formed by an uplifting of volcanic activity. So we have the Blowhole. This is one of those landscapes that people might be looking for specifically. And that brings us to review the island characteristics. We went through all the different islands. And so the main points that I want to share with you between the west and the east are right here. The western, they're the youngest and most active. They have lava fields and less wildlife. However, they have the best snorkeling as it's very colorful and active. That's where all the nutrients are coming from the cold currents. And it's best for the active guests, and they have a lot more diverse visitor sites. Itineraries for cruises are 6 to 8 days, and island hopping is only done on the eastern side of Isabela. For our eastern islands, these are the oldest and smallest islands. They're best for hiking, walks on land. They have much more vegetation, abundant bird life and land life. Temperatures are not as extreme and dry, and easier snorkeling in calmer waters. It's not as active or colorful, but it's deeper and more relaxed. And you have more time spent traveling between these islands when you're on a cruise. So itineraries are 6 to 8 days, and island hopping is mostly based to San Cristobal and Central Islands. And here's a list of the endemic wildlife. So western flightless cormorants, orcas, well, they're not endemic to the Galapagos, but it's the only place you can see them in Galapagos. The penguins, pink iguanas, fur seals, and the mola mola sunfish. And to the east, the endemic wildlife here is the red-footed booby. You can see all three-footed boobies on Punta Pitt, the Galapagos short-eared owl, waved albatross, and the Santa Fe land iguana. And then, of course, all the other Galapagos animals that are known for Galapagos are here found on both islands, both sides. And to quickly review the benefits for you, like we talked about before, it's important to give clear and concise feedback to your clients, and that's how we can help you best. So asking those specific questions we talked about at the beginning is really important, and then we gain confidence with our clients. We're saving time for everybody, not just for me and you, but for the client, because he doesn't want to spend too much time looking for what he wants to do in Galapagos. And then you end up with really great feedback post-trip. For example, these testimonials from TripAdvisor. When we're able to provide the client with what they're looking for, it turns out great for everybody, because I'm sure everyone can agree the worst thing that could happen is getting bad commentaries or bad TripAdvisor reviews, or they weren't happy about something. So this is what we absolutely want to avoid. And you can see here that this is evidence that we know what we're talking about. We know what to look for, as long as we're all on the same page. So that's the point of this webinar, so that we can all help each other make our clients really happy. So how did you guys like the webinar? I'm going to ask the first questions. Maybe what did you enjoy the most? If anybody could share, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can take turns. That's fine. Okay, everybody's still on mute, so if you said anything, I can't hear you just yet. Or you can write in the chat, that's fine too. But what did you like the most, or what was your biggest?
Katie, thank you. Yeah, Andrea actually has a question about what's the best time. Oh, Katie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Andrea had a question about what's the best time of the year to come to the Galapagos, and if there is a better season. Andres, I'm going to answer this question. And basically, you can go to Galapagos all the year. That's the first point. It's really important. There is no, not a big rainy season or a dry season that there is things we cannot do. Now, regarding the weather, maybe the best months would be between, starting between February to more or less April or May. Okay, in those months the weather is way better. The temperature of the water is also better, so nicer for snorkel. Of course, if then we're going on different months, maybe the water is going to be colder, but also when the water temperature changes, you also can see different species. Okay, so in the end, that's why Galapagos is a unique place and really nice to see in different parts of the year, because when you're going, you will see different things, different species, you know, that are developed or you know, giving birth to the little eggs, like turtles or things like that. So, but regarding the weather for the human being to be there between February to April, May is a really good season.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that there's a few comments saying learned a lot, and is it possible to receive a record of it? So we have a few other webinars that we're going to be doing. Thursday, I think. Do you have a question? Let me see if you unmute. Try to unmute yourself so I can see if we can hear you.
Who had a question, Katie?
I lost them. I don't know where they went. Someone had a question. Well, what I was saying is that when we're done with the webinars, the next Galapagos one will be with me tomorrow. Same time. I'm going to be doing cruise versus island hopping.
On Thursday. It's going to be
on Thursday. Tomorrow. Yeah, not tomorrow, Thursday, sorry. And I'm going to go into a little bit of the pros and cons of the island hopping versus cruise, and basically just the factors that you need to consider, maybe which one is best for your client and how we can help you. So I'll be doing that on Thursday. And then next week, our last webinar is on Peru. And once all those webinars are done, we're going to be sending all the recordings to everybody who attended. So that way you can have it on file. You can look back on this anytime that you need it, when you have questions for your clients, or you can also contact us. We're free all the time. You can call us, email, we're always available. Yeah. So if there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It was really fun for me to do this. And I shared with you here some work from home tips. I know we're all at home. We're all in the same boat, you could say. So here are some tips. And whenever you want to take a break, check out our YouTube channel. We've been doing a lot of behind the scenes work, having some fun with the downtime we have. And we have some really neat videos on YouTube. We've been cooking, we've been doing crafts, we've been doing all kinds of stuff. So check it out. And thank you for joining us today. And we'll be in touch soon. And I hope to see you guys on Thursday.